Everyone said I was lucky to have him. My mother said it, my sister said it, my closest friends said it, my coworkers said it. Even my therapist said it at first, before she understood he's so good to you. They'd say, he's so patient, so kind, so understanding, you're so lucky. And I'd nod, agree, say, yes, I know, I'm lucky, because he was good, objectively good, measurably good, good in ways that were visible, documentable, impossible to argue against. Which meant when I tried to leave, when I finally gathered the courage to say I can't do this anymore, nobody understood, nobody believed me. Nobody thought I had a good reason because good men don't make women want to leave, and leaving a good man makes you ungrateful, makes you the problem, makes you wrong. I'm 49, I left 2 years ago, and people still don't understand why. Still reference his goodness as evidence that I made a mistake. Still say, but he was so good to you, and I try to explain what it was like. The goodness made leaving impossible, not because it kept me trapped emotionally, but because it kept me trapped socially. The goodness created witnesses, created a narrative, created a story everyone believed, and in that story, he was the hero and I was the ungrateful wife who threw away something precious, something rare, something I should have been grateful for. The goodness made it impossible to leave because nobody believed there was anything to leave from. The goodness was real. That's what made it so devastating. He wasn't performing goodness, wasn't faking it for appearances. He genuinely was good in measurable, visible ways. He was patient when I was stressed, kind when I was upset, understanding when I made mistakes, supportive when I struggled, thoughtful in small daily gestures. Good in ways that made people notice, made people comment, made people tell me constantly how lucky I was, how rare he was, how I should never take him for granted. The goodness wasn't a disguise, wasn't a front, which meant I couldn't point to it and say this is fake. Couldn't argue it was manipulation, couldn't claim it wasn't real because it was real, measurably, visibly, undeniably real. But underneath the goodness, or maybe because of the goodness, or maybe existing alongside the goodness in a way I couldn't articulate for years, there was something else, something that made me feel crazy, something that made me feel trapped, something that made me wake up some mornings and think I couldn't do this for the rest of my life. But I couldn't name it, couldn't point to it, couldn't explain it to anyone. Because whenever I tried, the response was always the same, but he's so good to you. What are you complaining about? What more do you want? You have a good husband. You should be grateful, not whatever this is. If you've ever tried to leave someone who is objectively good, if you've tried to explain to people why you needed to go and watch them not understand, if you've heard but he's so good to you used as evidence that you're wrong, if that felt crazy because the facts of his goodness didn't match the feeling of being trapped. If you realize that being with a good person who makes you feel bad is somehow worse than being with a bad person, because at least with a bad person, people understand why you leave you already know what. I'm describing you already know the impossibility of leaving goodness, and maybe naming it seeing the mechanism exposed will help you believe that you're not crazy, not ungrateful, not wrong. We met when I was 42, he was 45. I'd been divorced for 3 years, was established in my career, owned my own home, had a solid friend group, felt clear about who I was and what I wanted. Met him at a work conference. He was intelligent, thoughtful, asked good questions, listened when I talked, seemed genuinely interested. We exchanged numbers, started talking, started dating. Everyone approved. My friends liked him. My family liked him. Even my teenage daughter liked him, which felt like the ultimate endorsement. He was good with her, respectful, never tried to be her father, gave her space, was kind without being overbearing. My mother kept saying he's a good man. You should hold on to this one. Don't mess this up like you did your marriage. Month 3, he did something that should have told me everything, but I interpreted it as goodness. We'd planned to meet for dinner. I'd had a terrible day at work project, fell apart, boss was critical. I was exhausted, frustrated, texted him saying, "I'm so sorry, but I need to cancel tonight. I just want to go home and be alone." He texted back immediately, "I understand. Work stress is hard. Take care of yourself. I'll check on you tomorrow." I felt grateful, felt understood, felt like he got it, felt lucky to have someone so patient, so understanding. My ex-husband would have been upset about canceled plans, would have made it about him, made me feel guilty, but not him. He was good. What I didn't recognize until years later was the pattern being established, my needs stated, his understanding response, my gratitude, my increasing sense that he was better than I deserved. The pattern trained me to see his responses as exceptional, as evidence of his goodness, as proof that I should be grateful, should hold on to him, should never take him for granted. The canceled dinner became the first of many stories I'd tell people about how understanding he was, how patient, how different from other men. The story became evidence of his goodness, became something I'd reference when I felt doubt, became a narrative that trapped me later because it had witnesses, had been told to friends, to family, had become part of the public story of our relationship. Month 6, we moved in together. His suggestion made practical sense. We were spending most nights together anyway. Keeping 2 places was expensive, inefficient. My lease was ending, the timing was right. My friends were excited, said it's so great that you found someone, said you deserve happiness after your divorce, said he's such a good man. My daughter had some reservations, said it feels fast, said she didn't really know him yet. I dismissed her concerns, said she'd feel differently once she got to know him better. Said he was good to us, good for us. Said I was happy, wasn't that what mattered? Living together revealed patterns I'd missed while dating, small things, things that seemed minor, things that on their own meant nothing but together created a constant low-level pressure I didn't have language for. He liked things clean, orderly, peaceful, which seemed reasonable, seemed like normal adult preference for organized space, but his version of clean was hospital clean. His version of orderly was nothing out of place. His version of peaceful was no tension ever. I started noticing I was adjusting constantly, putting things away immediately, keeping surfaces clear, moderating my energy, my volume, my emotional expression, making myself smaller, quieter, more contained to maintain the environment he needed. When I'd mention it gently, say I feel like I'm walking on eggshells, trying to keep everything perfect, he'd look genuinely confused. Say, I've never asked you to do that. I've never said you need to keep things perfect. I just prefer things tidy. Is that wrong? And technically he was right. He'd never said keep things perfect. Never made demands. Never criticized directly. His preferences were stated as preferences, his needs as needs, reasonable, understandable, and somehow I'd internalized them as requirements, had made them my job to fulfill, had created the pressure myself, which meant I couldn't blame him, couldn't say he was controlling because he wasn't. He was just stating preferences, and I was the one making myself crazy trying to meet them. My friends would visit, would comment on how nice the house looked, how organized, how peaceful, would say he's so neat, so together. You're lucky he takes care of things. They saw his tidiness as virtue, as evidence of his goodness, as proof he was a good partner. Didn't see that maintaining that tidiness had become my second job, my constant background task, my source of perpetual low-level anxiety. They saw the result, saw the peaceful, orderly home, saw him relaxed and comfortable in it, saw me agreeing that yes, he's great, we're happy. Didn't see the invisible labor I was doing to maintain the environment that made his relaxation possible. Year 1, his mother got sick, needed surgery, needed recovery support. He was devoted, visited her daily, helped with errands, coordinated her care, brought her meals, sat with her for hours. Everyone commented on what a good son he was, how devoted, how loving. My friend said you're so lucky to have someone who values family like that, said it shows what kind of man he is. Said, when you marry someone, you marry their character, and his character is solid. I agreed, felt proud of him, felt lucky to be with someone so caring, so responsible, so good. What I didn't say, what I couldn't say because it would sound petty, selfish, ungrateful, was that during the 3 months his mother was recovering, I became invisible. His attention, his energy, his time all went to her, which was right, which was appropriate, which was what a good son should do. But I was running our household, managing my own demanding job, parenting my daughter through her junior year of high school, doing all of it alone because he was with his mother. And when I mentioned feeling overwhelmed, feeling like I needed support, he said, I know this is hard. I appreciate you holding things down. My mother really needs me right now. This won't last forever, and I felt guilty for mentioning it. Felt selfish for needing anything when his mother was sick. Felt like I should be better, more supportive, more understanding, less needy. My friends heard the story of his devotion to his mother. Nobody heard the story of my exhaustion, my isolation, my sense that I'd disappeared. Because telling that story would make me sound terrible, would make me sound like I was jealous of his sick mother, like I was competing for attention during a crisis, like I was selfish, ungrateful, not supportive of family values, so I didn't tell it. Kept it inside, added it to the growing collection of things I felt but couldn't say. Things that on their own seemed too small to mention, but together were building into something heavy, something crushing, something I had no language for. Year 2, my daughter left for college. The house felt empty, quiet. The structure we'd built around her schedule dissolved. It was just the two of us. He seemed relieved. Said now we can focus on us, can build the life we want without having to consider her needs. His phrasing bothered me, made it sound like her needs had been a burden, like we'd been waiting for her to leave, but I didn't say anything because he said it kindly, with enthusiasm, like he was excited for this next phase. And objecting would make me seem like I didn't want to focus on us, didn't want to build a life together, didn't value our relationship. Without my daughter there as buffer, as third presence, as reason for activity and noise and life, the house became quieter, more controlled, more his. I found myself even more careful, even more contained, even more aware of his preferences, his moods. His need for peace. I'd come home from work energized, want to talk about my day, process something that happened. He'd be reading, wouldn't look up, would say mim in a way that wasn't really listening. I'd feel my energy deflate, feel like I was interrupting, being too much, not respecting his need for quiet after work. I'd go to another room, text a friend instead. Gradually, I stopped trying to share my day with him, stopped bringing my work stress home, stopped expecting him to be interested, learned to process everything internally or with friends, learned that the relationship worked better when I needed less from it. My friends would ask how things were. I'd say good. He's great. We're happy. Because what else could I say? He's too quiet. He doesn't want to hear about my day. He needs the house peaceful. I feel like I'm disappearing. Saying any of that would be met with, but that's not abuse. That's just personality differences. Everyone has adjustments in relationships. You're being too demanding. He works hard too. Of course, he needs quiet time. You should respect that. The responses I imagined stopped me from sharing the reality. Kept me telling the public story of happiness, of luck, of gratitude for a good man. Year 3, we got married. Small ceremony, close friends and family. Everyone was happy. Said finally, said you deserve this. Said he is such a good man. Said this is your second chance. Don't mess it up. My daughter was there, smiled, hugged us both. But later, in a quiet moment, said, Mom, are you happy? Really happy? I said, of course. Why would you ask that? She said, I don't know. You seem different, quieter, smaller somehow. I felt defensive. Said, I'm not smaller. I'm just older, more settled. She said, okay, if you say so, but the conversation stayed with me. Bounced around my head for weeks. Am I smaller? Have I changed? Is it visible? Is something wrong? But I couldn't identify what, couldn't point to anything he'd done wrong, anything that justified the feeling. Marriage intensified everything. His expectations, my accommodation, the gap between the public narrative and private reality. He wasn't cruel, wasn't mean, wasn't abusive in any way I could name. He was good, patient, kind, understanding. But being married to him felt like being slowly erased, like disappearing one preference at a time, one opinion at a time, one piece of myself at a time, not because he was taking those things, but because maintaining peace, maintaining his comfort, maintaining the goodness everyone saw required me to minimize myself, to need less, to be less, to become the kind of wife who didn't disturb the peaceful life he'd built. Year 4, I started therapy, told the therapist I felt depressed, anxious, lost. Couldn't explain why. Life was good, husband was good, job was good. Daughter was thriving at college, everything was objectively good. But I felt terrible, felt trapped, felt like I was suffocating. The therapist asked about my marriage. I said it's good. He's good, very patient, very kind. Never raises his voice, never criticizes, very understanding. She said it sounds like you're describing a good relationship. I said, I know it's good. That's why I feel crazy. That's why I'm here. Something is wrong with me. I have this good life and I'm not happy. What's wrong with me? She asked me to describe a typical day. I described it: waking up, making coffee the way he likes it, keeping the house quiet while he reads the paper, going to work, coming home, making dinner, keeping the kitchen clean, sitting quietly in the evening, going to bed. She asked what I want in a typical day. I started to answer, stopped, realized I didn't know, hadn't thought about what I want in years, had stopped asking that question, had stopped considering my preferences separate from his needs. She said, when's the last time you did something just because you wanted to, not because it fit into the peaceful, orderly life he prefers? I couldn't answer, couldn't remember, couldn't identify a single recent thing I'd chosen purely for myself. She said the word that changed everything, said, you're accommodating. I said, yes. That's what partnership is. Let's compromise. She said, there's a difference between accommodation and erasure. Accommodation is mutual. Both people adjusting. Erasure is one person disappearing to fit the other person's preferences. She asked, who's accommodating whom in your marriage? I said, I'm accommodating him. She said, what's he accommodating for you? I couldn't answer, couldn't think of a single thing he changed, adjusted, modified. To fit my preferences, he was exactly who he'd been when we met. I was completely different, had molded myself entirely around his needs, his preferences, his requirements for peace. That session broke something open. I went home, looked around the house, realized nothing in it was mine. Everything was his taste, his preference, his choice. Neutral colors he preferred, minimal decoration he liked, organized systems he'd created. I'd agreed to all of it, hadn't fought, hadn't objected, had thought I was being mature, being flexible, being a good partner, hadn't recognized I was being erased, was disappearing into his vision of life, was becoming a supporting character in his story rather than the protagonist of my own. I started testing small things, brought home flowers I liked, bright, cheerful Gerbera daisies, put them on the kitchen table. He came home, saw them, said they're nice, but they don't really fit the aesthetic we've created. Should we stick to the white tulips we usually get? I said, I like these. I wanted color. He said, okay, if you really want them, but they do clash a bit, don't they? I looked at the flowers, saw them through his eyes, saw them as wrong, as not fitting, as a disruption, took them to my home office instead, where they wouldn't clash, where they wouldn't disturb the aesthetic he needed. Felt defeated, felt like I'd failed a test I'd created for myself. I tried again, different test, suggested we go to a concert, band I loved, playing in the city, told him about it enthusiastically. He said, that sounds fun. When is it? I said, Friday night. He said, Friday. That's our quiet night. We usually stay in, decompress from the week. I said I know, but this band rarely tours. I'd really love to go, he said. Of course, if it's important to you, we can go. I'll make the sacrifice. The word sacrifice landed like a stone, made my enthusiasm feel selfish, made the concert feel like an imposition. I said, never mind, we don't have to go. It's fine, he said. Are you sure? I don't mind making the sacrifice if you really want to go. I said, no, it's okay. You're right. Fridays are quiet night. I shouldn't disrupt that. Felt like I'd failed again. Felt like my wants were disruptions. Impositions, sacrifices he'd have to make. Felt like wanting things made me demanding. Difficult, not easy like a good wife should be. Month later, I tried to talk to him about it. Said I feel like I'm always adjusting to you, always accommodating your preferences. I don't feel like there's space for me in our life. He looked genuinely hurt. Said, I've never asked you to do that. I've never demanded anything. I just have preferences like everyone does. You're free to do whatever you want. I said, I know you don't demand, but somehow I end up doing what you prefer anyway. He said, that sounds like your choice, your decision. I can't control what you choose to do. If you're accommodating me, it's because you want to, not because I'm making you. And technically he was right. He wasn't making me, wasn't forcing me. I was choosing it, choosing peace over preference, choosing his comfort over mine, choosing to be easy rather than difficult. But the choice didn't feel free, felt coerced by the structure we'd built, by the narrative everyone believed, by the need to maintain the goodness everyone saw. I told my best friend, said, I think I need to leave. I'm not happy. I feel like I'm disappearing. She said, leave. You mean divorce? I said, yes. Maybe I don't know. I just know. I can't keep doing this, she said. But why? What's wrong? Did something happen? I said, no, nothing happened. That's the point. Nothing's wrong. He's good. He's a good husband, but I'm not happy. She said, marriage isn't about being happy every minute. It's about partnership commitment. He's a good partner. He's committed. What more do you want? I said. I want to feel like I exist. She said, you exist. You have a great job, great friends, a husband who loves you. You exist plenty. You sound depressed. Have you talked to your therapist? I said, yes. She thinks the marriage is the problem. My friend said, then get a new therapist. You have a good marriage. You don't throw that away because you're having a midlife crisis. I tried talking to my sister, said, I'm thinking about leaving. She said, leaving who? I said, my husband. She said, what did he do? I said, nothing. He didn't do anything. That's the problem. She said, I don't understand. He's perfect. He's good to you. He's good to mom. He's good to your daughter. Why would you leave someone perfect? I said, because I feel like I'm dying, like I'm disappearing, like I don't exist anymore. She said, that's dramatic. You exist. You're just married. Marriage requires compromise, requires putting someone else first. Sometimes that's love, that's commitment. You sound ungrateful. You sound like you don't appreciate what you have. I told my therapist about these conversations. She said, you're experiencing something very specific. You're trying to leave a relationship where there's no visible abuse. No obvious reason, just a slow, systematic erasure of self that's invisible to everyone outside the relationship. The goodness is real, which makes it impossible to argue against. People see the goodness, see his patience, his kindness, his understanding. They don't see the cost of that goodness. Don't see what you have to become to maintain it. Don't see that you've made yourself small enough to fit inside his peaceful, orderly life. And when you try to explain it, try to name it, you sound crazy, ungrateful, like you're complaining about nothing. She said there's a specific social trap in leaving good people. Society tells us good people are rare, precious, not to be taken for granted. Tells us if we have someone good, we should be grateful, should hold on, should never let go. Tells us leaving someone good makes us bad, ungrateful, damaged, unable to appreciate what we have. The social pressure to stay with good people is enormous, is sometimes stronger than the pressure to stay with bad people, because leaving bad people is understood, justified, sympathized with. Leaving good people is questioned, criticized, pathologized. You become the problem, the ungrateful one, the one who couldn't appreciate a good man. She asked if I was ready for that, ready to be seen as wrong, as the one who messed up, as the one who threw away something precious, ready to have no one understand, no one support me, ready to have people reference his goodness as evidence I made a mistake. I said, I don't know. I don't know if I'm strong enough for that. She said, then you stay. And you accept that staying means continuing to disappear, continuing to erase yourself to maintain his peace, continuing to be small enough to fit inside the life he's built, or you leave. And you accept that everyone will think you're wrong, and you trust that your internal experience is valid even when no one else can see it. Month 47, I made the decision, chose leaving, chose being seen as wrong over continuing to disappear. Told him I wanted a divorce. He looked shocked, genuinely confused. Said, I don't understand. What did I do wrong? I said, you didn't do anything wrong. That's the problem. You're good. You're a good person, but I'm not happy. I need to leave. He said, we can work on this. We can go to therapy. I can change. Tell me what to change. I said, there's nothing specific to change. It's the whole thing. It's me disappearing into your preferences, into your need for peace, into your version of life, he said. But I never asked you to disappear. I never demanded that. You chose to accommodate me. I can't help what you chose. I said, I know. I know you didn't demand it. That's what makes it so hard to explain. That's why everyone thinks I'm wrong, but I need to leave anyway. He told people I was having a breakdown, that I wasn't thinking clearly, that I needed help. People believed him because it made more sense than me leaving a good man for no reason. My mother called, said, I heard you want a divorce. I can't believe you're doing this to him. He's such a good man. He doesn't deserve this. I said, it's not about what he deserves. It's about what I need, she said. What you need is to appreciate what you have, need to stop being selfish, need to think about him for once instead of yourself. Hung up on me, didn't speak to me for 6 months. My friends had interventions, took me to coffee, to lunch, to dinner. Said, we're worried about you. This isn't like you. You're making a huge mistake. He's a good man. Good men are rare. You're throwing away something precious. I said, I know he's good. I know this doesn't make sense to you, but I need to do this. They said, you need therapy. You need medication. You need to fix whatever's broken in you that can't appreciate a good man. Slowly, they stopped calling, stopped inviting me to things. Chose him in the social divorce, which made sense. He was good. I was the problem. Why would they choose the problem? 2 years out, I live alone, rebuilt my life slowly, quietly, without most of the people who were in it before. Lost my mother's approval, lost most of my friends, lost the narrative of being lucky, of having a good husband, of being grateful, but gained something I couldn't name at first. Something that felt like space, like air, like room to exist without constantly monitoring, constantly adjusting, constantly making myself smaller. Gained the ability to buy flowers I like, see concerts I want to see, be loud when I feel loud, be messy when I feel messy, exist at full volume without worrying about disturbing someone's peace. My daughter understands now, says she's proud of me, said she saw me disappearing. Didn't know how to name it, said I'm more like myself again, more like the mom she remembers from before. She's the only one who doesn't think I'm crazy, doesn't think I threw away something precious, sees that leaving wasn't throwing away. It was reclaiming, wasn't loss, it was recovery, wasn't mistake, it was survival. Here's what I desperately wish someone had told me when I met him. When everyone was telling me how lucky I was, when his goodness was being established as fact, as narrative, as the story everyone will remember. Goodness isn't enough. Being with someone good who makes you disappear is worse than being with someone bad, because at least with bad people, you're allowed to leave, allowed to complain, allowed to say this isn't working. With good people, you're trapped by social pressure, by other people's disbelief, by the narrative that good people are precious and leaving them makes you wrong. If you're reading this and you're with someone good, someone patient, kind, understanding someone, everyone tells you you're lucky to have, but you feel trapped, Feel like you're disappearing, feel like you're becoming smaller to fit into their life. You're not crazy, not ungrateful, not wrong. You're experiencing something specific, something real, something valid, even though no one else can see it. The goodness is real. But the cost of maintaining that goodness might be yourself, and that cost is too high, regardless of how good they are, regardless of what everyone else thinks, regardless of how it looks from outside. Leaving someone good requires accepting that no one will understand. No one will support you. Everyone will think you're wrong. Requires being willing to be the villain in the story, the ungrateful one, the one who threw away something precious. Requires trusting your internal experience over everyone's external perception. Requires believing you deserve to exist at full size, even when someone else's piece requires you to be small. Requires choosing yourself, even when choosing yourself makes you the bad person. If this resonated, if you felt trapped by someone else's goodness, the next video is crucial. It's called I Thought I Was Loved. Until I said no. Once, it's about the moment you discover that love wasn't unconditional, wasn't freely given, was contingent on your compliance, on your yes, on your accommodation. It's about what happens when you finally say no to something, anything, and watch the love disappear, watch the kindness evaporate, watch the goodness revealed as conditional, as something you had to earn through constant agreement, and how that single no shows you the truth of what you were living in, shows you that you weren't loved for who you were, but for how easy you made his life. Link is on screen now. It's the video that made me understand why I'd been so afraid to refuse anything, why no felt dangerous, why disagreement felt like risk.